I lost my grandmother in January of that year. And within 9 months, I lost my father. It made me introspect. It made me slightly philosophical. And I think it fundamentally changed in many ways the person that I was as well. In my first meeting with Mr. Modi, I thought to myself that I'd be spending 10 minutes at most. Modi ji spent an hour and 15 minutes with me. And the bell didn't ring once. The time he spends with you is with you. And that is leadership to me. And as I said to you, that I am not someone who's governed by this. I'm someone who's governed by this. For the BJP, it's country followed by party. For others, it's the converse. That's the difference. Why has this alliance all come together? It is not a fight for democracy. It's a fight for kursi. I'm very clear whether there is an India alliance or there is no India alliance. The BJP is very strongly rooted in Madhya Pradesh. Election does not start the day the model code of conduct comes into place. For me, an election starts the day you win an election.
Why is Mr. Kamal Nath so confident of victory?
When there is a yawning gap between what you perceive to be your reality versus what the reality on the ground is, that to you is a case in point with the Congress party. The fact that cities and airports that were wiped off the civil aviation map post-World War II today are thriving as airports. It is no longer a China plus one strategy. It is now an India strategy.
Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching ANI Podcast with Smita Prakash. Thank you for watching or listening in to the show and writing in to tell us who you would like on the show. Today, we have the Civil Aviation Minister, Jyotiraditya Scindia. For those who are not familiar with Indian politics, here's a short primer. Jyotiraditya Scindia is a recent entrant into the cabinet of Prime Minister Modi. That was in 2021. He jumped ship from the Congress party in 2020 after being in that party for almost 2 decades. Scindia belongs to the erstwhile royal family of Gwalior. His father Madhav Rao Scindia was in the Congress party. His grandmother Vijay Raje Scindia was part of the Jan Sangh, the precursor of the current BJP, of which Jyotiraditya Scindia is a cabinet minister. Thank you, Jyotiraditya Scindia, for being here. I don't know how to refer to you because your fans, they refer to you as Maharajji, and then there are so many minister, sir,
No.
sir.
My name is Jyotiraditya, so whatever you'd like. If it's a little bit of a tongue twister, which it sometimes...
No, why would it be?
Sometimes is for a lot
Really?
of people, yeah.
What do you get called?
So either Jyotir or Aditya many times. Or in the US, because for them it was a real tongue twister, so they abbreviated it to the first letter, which is just J.
J. You're not Joe.
No. I certainly am not a Joe.
You're not a Joe.
I'm not a Joe. Yeah, so whatever you like.
Okay, all right. So, there are a bunch of questions which I want to ask you, but I would, of course, begin with your portfolio. When you joined the BJP and when you joined PM Modi's cabinet, it was like a given. I think most people thought that, yes, he is going to get civil aviation. Tell me, what is how did you feel when it was offered to you, or did you ask for it?
No, not at all. I have, first of all, I've never put a preference for any portfolio throughout my 2 decades of public service in any of the portfolios that I've held. Secondly, I do not think that it is your domain to ask for one, whether it may be your preference or not. It is whatever the leadership decides is right for you, where the leadership in its opinion feels that you can do the best justice. And therefore, for me, it was, first of all, a very exciting portfolio to have for various reasons that we'll probably get into while we converse through this interview. But most importantly, it was also a very emotional one for me.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was that my father had held this portfolio in the early 90s, 91 to 93. And for me, it was also a challenging portfolio because whilst he had held it, he had really opened up the skies, and he had deregulated this industry. And under the Prime Minister's vision and his uh, very decisive thinking, he was very clear in terms of how he wanted to see this sector grow and be, most importantly, democratized. And therefore, for me, it was a great challenge when I found out that I had this portfolio.
For our overseas viewers, here's a short primer about Jyotiraditya Scindia's father, Madhavrao Scindia. Madhavrao Scindia was the Civil Aviation Minister in the cabinet of Prime Minister Narasimha Rao. In 1992, one of the Indian Airlines aircraft crashed, though without any loss of life, and Scindia promptly submitted his resignation, which Prime Minister Rao accepted with alacrity. Madhavrao Scindia died at the age of 56 in a plane crash in Uttar Pradesh. All 8 people died in the crash. At that time, he was being seen as the future Prime Minister candidate of the Congress party. Young Jyotiraditya Scindia was symbolically anointed the head of the family after his father's death. Jyotiraditya's father was the son of the erstwhile ruler of the Gwalior royal family. Jyotiraditya's mother, Madhavi Raje Scindia, is the great-granddaughter of the former Prime Minister of Nepal and Maharaja of Kaski and Lamjung, Shamsher Bahadur Rana. So let's rewind back to the time when your father passed away. What was it like at that moment? Because you were really young, and your father was seen as a prime ministerial candidate even in those years, and people saw so much potential in him. And here you were, this young person. He was an influential. I mean, every son is close to his father, but for you, he was more than just a father. He was a hero of sorts. Tell me a little bit about that period in your life.
It's a painful period. It's not a period that, to be very candid with you, I like revisiting too often. I had been away at Stanford for 2 years. I was pursuing my MBA. And my parents had just come for my graduation May of 2001. And whilst I was at Stanford, I had participated in a business plan competition. And as it turns out, my colleague and I, with our business plan, we had won the competition. And therefore, we were pretty much set on the path of making that idea, which was on a piece of paper, into reality. And it was very early years, way beyond this outsourcing business trend that had started in India. I'm talking about 2001, almost 22 years ago, and we were looking at really the high-end outsourcing, high-end, high-value outsourcing. So we were looking at the technology aspect of it. And so I came back to India sometime in early mid-August of 2001, and we were looking for office space and hiring people and things like that. And within a month and a half of me coming back, and I was in Bombay, this happened on the 30th of September, and it pretty much changed my life. I then got into politics and ran for the first time for Parliament in 2002.
But you didn't have any political inclination till then? Like, did you
I
have
did-
a conversation with your dad about politics? in
My
the past?
father was okay. So let me rewind. I was certainly involved in an unofficial capacity with him since the age of 13. I first campaigned for him in 1984. So I was all of 13 years old. And I remember that campaign very vividly. And I campaigned for him in every election since, except the last one, which was in 99, I believe, because I had just gone to Stanford. So I wasn't here. So I was very much involved with the region, with some of his projects and things like that, but in a peripheral manner, not in a direct manner. I did not have aspirations of joining politics at that point of time. I was much more focused on setting up a business. But then fate at times, Smitaji deals you some cards, and you have to accept them and take on the challenge at that point of time. But if you ask me 20 years down the road, would I change anything in the way fate has taken me down a different path? And my answer is unequivocally a no, because the joy that one gets from not necessarily politics, and I create a distinction. My father always did, my grandmother always did create a distinction between politics and public service. And our call in this family is not for politics, it is for public service. And I remember him saying once, and I've always carried it with me ever since, कि हमारी लक्ष्य कभी राजनीति नहीं होनी चाहिए, हमारा लक्ष्य जनसेवा होनी चाहिए, और राजनीति केवल एक माध्यम होनी चाहिए उस लक्ष्य की पूर्ति करने के लिए. And so has it been my calling for the last 2 decades of public life. And therefore, if you see my resume, or my internal calling is that of a public servant and not a politician.
You know, when he passed away, when your father passed away, there was this very poignant ceremony where you were appointed a kind of a titular head, should I say, or of the family. And here you were a very young person. Your aunts are there, your mother is there, and you have your aunts who are much older than you, who are blessing you. On the other side of the, I mean, your father was in the Congress, they are in the BJP. But at that moment, there is something which is uniting you all. Grief, probably, and at that time, politics doesn't play. What was going through your mind at that stage?
I would say it's a step beyond grief, Smitaji, because I lost my grandmother in January of that year. And within 9 months, I lost my father. And so suddenly 2 generations just left. So it's beyond grief, and it at least for me, it made me introspect. It made me slightly philosophical, and it changed a lot of my worldviews, and it changed a lot of the views I had on life. What should be important as opposed to what we think is important. What is permanence and what is temporary. And I think it fundamentally changed in many ways the person that I was as well.
You're very young and you still had this stoic expression. There was no, there was no outpouring of grief. You were watching your mother so young, widowed at that stage.
I think more than that, I think it was, to be very candid, I think it was just shock, and also it was internalization, and also the fact that you've got to rise to the challenge, and you're the man of the family now, and you've got to be responsible. So there's no time for grief, and there's no time to wallow in yourself. You are now responsible for others, and others beyond your immediate family. A lot of people that look to my father for leadership, for resolution, and one feels responsible because at the end of the day, for us, the family is not the immediate family. It is the people of the region. It is all of Gwalior, Chambal, Malwa, all of that. And therefore, that level of responsibility also dawns on you. And doesn't dawn on you while you have someone elder in the family, be it my father, be it my grandmother. And suddenly when 2 generations are gone, then it has to dawn on you.
Right. People talk about dynasty politics in a very pejorative manner, but I'm sure you have a different take on that because, as you said, it's not politics in your family wasn't seen as something for power, but it was more than that. It is beyond that. It's a connection. There's a public service, and there's this larger goal of serving the community. So Could you tell me what your view is about that?
It's exactly that, Smitaji. If you actually look back in history, this family's origins are very basic.
Basic?
We come from a small little village in Satara district, whose name is Kanerkhed. And 300-400 years ago, my ancestor was the patil of that village. And the patil pretty much means, in today's terminology in Maharashtra, is like a sarpanch, a headman. And we rose through short dint of hard work and perseverance in the Maratha ranks, first within under Chhatrapati Shivaji, and then so on and so forth until Mahatji Scindia, who really brought about or turned into reality Shivaji Maharaj's dream of Hindvi Swaraj by capturing Delhi, the only Hindu ruler to have done that.
That's your great-great-grandfather.
That's 5 generations, six generations ago.
Okay.
He was injured in the Battle of Panipat. His leg got cut off in 1761. Third Battle of Panipat, 14th of January, Makar Sankranti. 12 members of my family's heads were cut off. He's the only one who survived with an amputated leg. And in 10 years, he raised an army and conquered Delhi. And pretty much established, as I said, Shivaji Maharaj's dream. And ever since that, it's always been this service for a greater cause for the family. And therefore, that history, where on the one sense brings a great sense of pride, but along with that pride also brings a great sense of responsibility in how to conduct your life, what your mission and what your goals should be. And for me personally, as I mentioned to you, it's been not more about politics, but more about development. And so for me, in my last 20 years, every morning that I wake up and every night that I go to bed is the thought of what else can I do which is different, and how can I do the things that I'm doing in a different way to be more productive, and how can I bring about change of life. So that's really been my calling, whether it's been in the role of a member of parliament or whether it's been in the role of a minister. That doesn't matter to me. But at the end of the day, it's about performance and it's about delivery.
So the transition from a corporate life which you were leading to politics was a natural one, you're saying, which, but was it natural to get into go into the Congress party? Or your grandmother was with the BJP, your
Yes.
aunts were with the BJP?
Yes, but at that point of time, I did take that call, and it was a conscious call. I do not believe that any decision in life on any individual is thrust on you. It must be and it should be a thought-out decision, and I did take that call, and I did serve within that party for 17 years.
Your grandmother was this mother figure for the Jan Sangh and the BJP then, and your father carved out his own space in the Congress party.
Yeah.
Was there a choice for you, or did you automatically feel that your ideology matched the Congress?
I don't think that those who say that there is never a choice actually have explored all choices. There always is a choice. There's a choice for you in your life in terms of the way you mapped out your career. There's a choice for me. There's always a choice.
Okay.
And you do weigh every opportunity and every option that you have before you take a decision.
Right. You were seen as very close to the Gandhi family. There are people who've come on the podcast who say that among the few people they know, those who left the Congress and came to the BJP, those who were in the Congress, they said of the people who could just walk in and chat with the Gandhi family, your name comes up right up there. You were very close to the siblings, Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi. But what happened? Where did the relationship sour? Personal and political.
It's not the issue of a relationship souring. It's the issue of an institution losing its moorings. Every institution, like every individual, has to have certain mission, values, principles, and goals. Every political party in India, I believe, certainly has its own. But when an institution starts losing its way, when an institution loses track with the reality of India, when an institution no longer is able to mold itself. So you have a group of vision, values, and morals, but then that constantly has to be molded along with what is happening in the environment. When that happens, then the process of decay sets in. On the other hand, you have a leader who is not only inspiring but is very committed to the cause of public service, committed to the cause of the idea of India, is unflinching in his resolve to cleanse the system, is very focused on delivery and execution, changing the perception of India within India itself and externally. And therefore, there's a great attraction and a magnetism that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his persona, exudes. And then, when you have this wide chasm between, on the one hand, an institution that's unfortunately going into decay and is not willing to turn around, and on the other hand, you have a enigmatic personality, then of course one is attracted towards that if your cause is public service. If your cause is public service, then you have to make sure that you are able to effect that goal and that mission of yours. And so for me, it was a combination of this factor and, equally important, what was happening in my state. In 2018, we all thought that there was a track record that the BJP had, but we thought we could do way much better. And I was part of that.
The Congress party at this time.
Yeah. And I was part of that enterprise. And we did form a government. We produced tremendous results in Madhya Pradesh, and more specifically in my region. Won 26 out of the 34 seats there. And then we formed a government. The choice of who's going to lead that government, like in every political party, is with the leadership of that party. And I had no grouse with that. I have no grouse with it at all, even to this day. And I myself said that I will give my unflinching support. But over a period of time, when you see all the purposes of the establishment of the government fall by the wayside, and a complete system of rot and decay set in, and corruption set in, moving away from the ideals of development and progress. And when you raise that, and then you are put down and insulted, then certainly the cause of staying with an institution that you have fervently worked for is not, the fervor is not there anymore. And on the other side, there's a magnetism. And for me, so therefore, it was a no-brainer.
When you were made in charge of Uttar Pradesh, Western Uttar Pradesh, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah, in that election, anybody who was there covering that election could see your heart was not there in that campaign. You were there, of course, you were there with Rahul Gandhi wherever he was going, and there are visuals which are clearly there where he's performing some religious ceremony and you're explaining to him right hand, left hand, what that means. It was literally, you were there everywhere with him, but your heart was not there in that. There was one or two election campaigns which we saw where public rallies, your heart wasn't there. It had already started, I think, disassociating.
You see, I'll tell you what happens when you, my grandmother, my father, myself, we have been people and demonstrated by actions that are governed and driven not necessarily by our mind but by our heart. And I have always believed that your heart has to be in your job. If your heart is not there, then you're just doing something because you have to do it. That process had already started. And I don't want to delve too much in my past because my past is in my past. I made a a very clean break. I was very upfront. I don't hold any grudges. I did not hold any grudges. And if you saw the letter that I wrote as well,
Yes.
I thanked the party for the opportunities and the time that I got to serve through the party. I also thanked, from the bottom of my heart, all the people that I served with. But it was time for me to move on.
But you didn't take the plunge on your own. You took people with you. You broke the party. You broke the government. The Operation Kamal was put into effect.
I don't think
by
there
you.
was any Operation Kamal or there was any operation at all.
A new government came into power. No?
Sure, but at that point of time when I decided that it's no longer going to work the way it is, again, people who are not necessarily only politically tied with me, but there was an emotional bond, decided that they will also walk with me. And mind you, and I'd like to make this very, very clear in this conversation with you, you have seen many cases in the history of politics of India where Smita Prakash ji has gone from X to Y and Jyotiraditya Scindia has gone from Y to Z. But there are very few cases where this has happened within 15 months of a government being formed. It's generally always the case that people move 4 months before an election or 6 months before an election. 15 months after a government has been formed, and that too after 15 years. And those who left with me, 25 of them, 6 of them were cabinet ministers in that government. And that just shows you the bankruptcy of that government. That let alone the fact that they could not hold on to their MLAs, they could not even hold on to their cabinet ministers. Which also shows the persecution that probably went on within that government. Versus not only the public at large, because there were many promises that were made that were being defied every single day that this government was in government in Madhya Pradesh, but also people were being persecuted. And therefore, at some point of time, people also decided to call it quits. And all of them, mind you, went back to the people. So the old system where I would move from X to Y and nothing would happen to me doesn't stand good anymore.
Because they had to
I have to
fight.
go back to the arena of the people and get elected again. And out of we had 29 by-elections, of which 28 seats were with the Congress. So 28 seats lay with the Congress party. The Congress party could retain only 9 of those seats.
But those who came with you, out of that, 6 have gone back to the Congress now.
No one's gone back. Not a single person has gone
22
back.
came with you, and
Not a single person has gone back. So the people who have gone back are, there have been people who've gone back and there have been people who've come from the Congress to the BJP.
Yeah.
It's been both ways. But again, that's why I'm so glad I made that point to you.
the floating population.
So where are we now?
Yeah.
We are 55 days away from an election. So that is bound to happen.
Okay.
During election period, I think more than me, you have seen many more elections than I have, right? And during an election period, there is always this Ayaram
Yeah.
Gayaram policy.
True.
And again, let me on in this conversation with you say that I hold no grudges. If you believe that you have a better opportunity somewhere else, no longer with the BJP, and that is your decision, it is better for you to move on. And I hold no grudges against those people.
You may have no grudges, but obviously the Congress has grudges because
Or I can't help that.
they feel, like with Himanta Sharma, there's this feeling that it wasn't just one person going. You broke the party, you broke a system, and you set up another. And therefore,
I'll tell you
there's
what,
the thing that you could be
no,
I don't want to use the word traitor, but
I'll tell you what, Smita ji. You run an organization. Okay? If a sizable number of people are leaving from your organization, should it be something that worries you or not?
yes,
Is it something that worries the Congress?
apparently does, no? Because in Parliament they lashed out at you recently.
That's their prerogative. And again, I hold no grudges for them to do that. But I don't think it does. And that's one of the issues. Any organization that is losing talent, at the end of the day, what defines a successful institution today in the world? Whether it's the media, whether it's a political organization, whether it's a corporate company. One single factor alone, and that is it's HR. Human resource capability to be able to attract, retain, and make sure your talent is committed to you is the single biggest challenge facing any organization today in the world. And those that are successful versus those who are not, that is the distinction between those.
So, what is it that is working for the BJP as far as HR is concerned?
I think the BJP believes in meritocracy. The BJP believes in a democratic system where if you agree or disagree, you can speak up and voice your opinion. The BJP believes in credibility. And I think from the Prime Minister to the Home Minister to the party president, all the way down the cadre, I think, and the democratization of the system. Today, if you're a minister in the central government, you're a member of parliament, you're an MLA, you're no bigger or no smaller than the ordinary BJP worker. You are first a Karyakarta. You are then anything else. And everything that is expected from a Karyakarta is expected from you.
How did you take to that? Because
I
you're
loved
not...
it because I have come from a corporate background. I started at the shop floor when I became a banker.
Tell us about that.
I graduated from Harvard in '93 and I joined investment banking soon after. And I was first in New York and then Hong Kong and then came back to Bombay and along with my boss set up the investment banking, Morgan Stanley investment banking office in Bombay. And it was the most enriching, rewarding experience. The other thing, along with HR, I think it's very important for any organization to continually be a learning organization. I don't think you can incentivize people by purely paying them a fat check, but you incentivize people by ensuring that they're always learning while they're on the job. And my learning curve was almost 85 degrees while I was in banking because the exposure that I got. We started our investment banking office from our hotel room. So
in Bombay.
When I say that I was on the shop floor, we were on the shop floor. I was doing photocopying. I was preparing PowerPoint presentations for clients. I was doing the two-binder hole punching and putting it into files, taking I'm saying our because I spent 17 years of my life in Mumbai. Our favorite black and yellow cabs in the monsoon rain in Mumbai. It's pouring, taking our blue binders, which we used to call our presentations, putting that as an umbrella
So much
on
for
our
people
heads.
saying that you're a privileged background kid
and running from one office to the other and making pitches. It was an amazing learning experience. And so I did that for almost 5 years before taking a year off and then finally deciding to go to business school.
So you've gone through the mill in learning how to do it. You bring that discipline into the party when you come. Now here, but you can't disassociate from the privileged background that you have. And you say
I
that...
wouldn't want to.
You wouldn't want to.
I wouldn't want to call it a privileged background. It's a background that I'm extremely proud of. It's a background that is steeped in hard work, perseverance, commitment, ideals, and a vision.
But you come to the floor level when you start, isn't it, as a Karyakarta? You begin with learning a new kind of
and I think,
working style,
and I think
ethics.
The ability to be able to adapt is key.
Okay.
Never ever in life, and this is something that I've learned both from my grandmother and my father, must you think that there is no learning left. You must always try and see what is it that you can better about yourself, what is it that you can correct about yourself. Always be open to constructive criticism. see how you can change the way that you evolve so that you can be a better human being.
You've been in Delhi for so long, in various capacities as minister. You've been in parliament, but state politics is extremely important to you, isn't it? And now
Yeah.
Madhya Pradesh is going to polls. I'd recently interviewed the chief minister, and I had asked him this also because in Madhya Pradesh there's this whole talk that there is Shivraj, there's a Naraz, and there's a Maharaj. So there are factions within the BJP where everybody's sulking.
There
What
are
do you have to say to that?
first of all, there are no factions, and this terminology has been put forward by those who believe in a jhoot, loot, and suit ki sarkar.
सूट की सरकार.
Yeah, they believe in corporatism. They believe in milking money out of the system, and that's what they showed in their 15 months. Imagine this: that if we had had that government through COVID, where there was no management, there was no care about preparing for COVID. If we had had that government today, a Madhya Pradesh that was a Bimaru state in 2003 when the BJP took over, across all levels of index in terms of development, was a complete failure. Today, that very state, from an irrigation potential point of view, has increased its potential 7 times, from 7.5 lakh hectares to 47 lakh hectares. Power production, we used to hear about, बिजली नहीं है, लट्टू में प्रकाश नहीं है. From 5,600 megawatts to 28,000 megawatts. Potholed roads. You couldn't drive in Madhya Pradesh, and I'm sure you'd experience that as well.
Yeah.
44,000 kilometers of roads, today 5 lakh kilometers of roads, almost 12 times. GDP 11,000 rupees per capita, today 1,40,000 rupees per capita. Doctors in Madhya Pradesh 7,500, today 51,000. Across all parameters of development, Madhya Pradesh has transformed itself under the leadership of the BJP, under Shivraj Singh Chauhan. If you did not have the BJP today, you would not have the development schemes which they had all scrapped. What did they promise? They said, Congress ka kehna saaf, har kisan ka karza maaf. And Congress, no one less than the Congress president himself, Rahul Gandhi, from every podium, said, अगर 10 दिन के अंदर हमने किसानों का कर्जा माफ नहीं किया, हम मुख्यमंत्री को बदल देंगे. The public waited for 10 days, for 6 months, for 15 months. Not a single kisan ka karza maaf hua. 26 lakh farzi certificates were distributed. Shivraj Singh Chauhan, as soon as he came into government, the byaj of every kisan, 2,300 crores, he put the money directly into the cooperatives. Today, you have a Kisan Samman Nidhi that is run by Prime Minister Modi, where 6,000 rupees is given to every marginal farmer's bank account. 11 crore farmers across the country. To that, the BJP state government has added an additional 6,000 rupees. That means close to about 84 lakh farmers have been added onto that scheme. So 12,000 rupees as opposed to 6,000. Ladli Behna Yojana, 1,000 rupees of empowerment per woman is going into people's accounts today. It is not something that we are promising. It's been happening since June. 1 crore 31 lakh women in our state. Infrastructure development. My area, Gwalior today, I'm building out a 600 crore airport in Gwalior. Prime Minister has approved a 500 crore railway station in Gwalior. An elevated road, Gadkari Sahib is approved, like the ring road in Delhi, 1,400 crores. A water scheme connecting Chambal to Gwalior, which has been the dream of Gwalior, 1,200 crores has been approved. Would this development have happened under a Congress regime?
Are the people buying this argument? Because the polls show that
the belief that this will be made possible, the testament to that is the result that you got in the by-elections, where out of 28 seats held by the Congress lost 19, which means that you had some level of trust and belief that the BJP and its leadership would result in development and progress for this region, which had been ignored in the last 15 months. And I'm confident today that in this election in November, you will see a very strong re-emergence of a BJP government in Madhya Pradesh.
There are people who feel that, Shivraj ji has been CM for so long. The youth, they don't even know what it is like. The young voters, the first time voters, they were probably 5 or 6 when he became chief minister, and he's been around. So many people who we spoke to said बोरियत हो गई है. If nothing else, it is that we want to change for no other reason that we've had Shivraji for a long time. You want to change. Does that mean that they would want to change even in the BJP or just the chief minister?
No, I don't think that. So you have two kinds of situations when you go into an election. You either have an anti-incumbency, and the best example of an anti-incumbency is what happened in 2003 to the Congress party, where the Congress party was reduced to 37 seats out of 230. That for you is anti-incumbency. Or you have, in the case of many governments, a re-election back into government. I certainly believe that in Madhya Pradesh, it is the latter and not the former. I have toured almost about 22 districts of Madhya Pradesh. And I do not see, forget about anti-incumbency, I see a pro-incumbency. Our schemes have resulted in actually economic development of people across all strata. Forget about caste, forget about religion, across all strata. And because of that, I see that there is tremendous belief in the BJP. The Congress has had a track record in Madhya Pradesh. You're absolutely right. If in the event it had not had a 15-month government. But people have tried and tested that 15-month government and seen exactly the yawning gap between the promises made and the delivery. And therefore, and 15 months, mind you, is a very, very long time for government. To give you my own example, I've been a minister now for just a little over 2 years. 15 months is a very, very long time for you to be able to perform. And if you had performed, and if Smita Prakash ji had left, you certainly in the by-election should have held on to the seats that were yours prior to Smita Prakash ji leaving. The fact that you could not hold on to your cabinet ministers, you could not hold on to your own MLAs. How many MLAs? 114 MLAs. You could not even hold on to 25 of them. And let me tell you on record here that there was rancor widespread, many more beyond the 25.
Then why is Mr. Kamal Nath so confident of victory?
Everyone is confident. Everyone exudes confidence. I have told you this many times, Smita ji, that when there is a yawning gap between what you perceive to be your reality versus what the reality on the ground is, that to you is a case in point with the Congress party.
See, but Rahul Gandhi recently said he showed confidence about Madhya Pradesh. He said Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh is in the bag. Rajasthan will be kind of a fight. He wasn't saying that we're going to win all 4 states, all 5 states.
I'm not going to get into a debate over what X says or Y says. I'm only saying to you from my side that I have a full 100% confidence that the BJP will form the next government in Madhya Pradesh.
Why do you think Kamal Nath ji doesn't want the India Alliance, INDIA Alliance to campaign or to hold rallies? He's like, I don't need them. We are fine with ourselves. He's that confident.
You should ask him that.
He seems, the alliance is just about in its nascent stage. What is your view about it? Do you think any ripples at all in your state?
From my point of view, I'm very clear whether there is an India alliance or there is no India alliance. The BJP is very strongly rooted in Madhya Pradesh. It is rooted in every panchayat. It is rooted in every ward. Couple that with the fact that development has reached every panchayat, development has reached every ward. There is tremendous amount of belief in the party. There is tremendous amount of belief in the leadership of the party, both in the center and in the state. And I am very confident that the people of my country and the people of Madhya Pradesh both are extremely astute when they cast their franchise. And they will cast their franchise for what will do good for them in their perception. And as far as the India Alliance or the India Alliance, this is exactly the internal quagmire, if you will, that this alliance is faced with. It is doomed from the day it starts. Karun ya na karun. Saath rahe ya na rahe.
Whereas they say that it's the BJP which is nervous. That's why this whole Bharat India thing.
Why has this alliance all come together? It is not a fight for democracy. It is not a fight for development. It is not a fight for Bharat Jodo. It's a fight for kursi. And you think the people of India don't see through that? Where on the one hand you have a towering personality of a man that is devoted to Ma Bharati. Every step that he takes, every single minute of every single day, a person who works 22 hours a day for India, for Bharat, today is being conspired against by this India alliance just because for some way or the other they have been away from the kursi for too long and they want it. Why? It is not to serve India. It is not to serve their state.
It's to save
It's to
the
serve
idea,
themselves.
It's not to save
It is
the
to
idea
serve.
of
It
India.
is to serve themselves.
To save the idea of India, the unity of India.
What is their idea of India? Their idea of India is to oppose Article 370. I was in that Congress working committee where the abrogation of Article 370 was being attacked. And I raised my voice even though I was in the Congress working committee as a member of the Congress working committee. And I said that this is the idea of India that we are attacking. There is no way we should do this. And I was attacked. And I'm talking about, roughly about 10 months before I left the party.
What did they say to you?
I don't want to get into that. That's my past.
Okay.
But
Sure.
let me just say this, they did not spare me. So that's fine. And that's fine. We can have a difference of views. And I respect that. I even tweeted on that. Their idea of India is to oppose the Ram Mandir. Their idea of India is to go outside India and attack India. Their idea of India is anything that is constructive for India must be decried. That is their idea of India. There have been many governments in the past, Smitaji, and let's go back in history, where you and I may be, I don't want to use the word foes, but opponents politically. But when the idea of the country comes in mind, we have worked together. Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji is an example of that.
Yeah.
Country always must come first. For the BJP, it's country followed by party. For others, it's the converse. That's the difference. And therefore, this fight is not for India. It is for their existence.
In your interaction with Mr. Modi, when you first met him after you joined the party, did you, firstly, who approached you to join the BJP? One, if you can tell me that. If you can't, I well understand. But when you had your first meeting with him, what was that like?
Well, let me say this, that I don't want to get into my past, as I mentioned, but I had met with Mr. Modi even on the sidelines of Parliament while I was in Parliament on the Congress side. And I always had a respect for him in terms of his commitment towards development, progress, the country. And my first meeting with him was a very, very warm meeting. A very warm meeting. I don't want to get into the details, but enough said that.
Is there something that he said to you, what he expected of you when he was giving you the portfolio of civil aviation? Was there any goal set for you?
Yes, in my first meeting when I went to meet with him, I first went thinking I'm meeting with the Prime Minister, someone who's an extremely busy person. And I had thought to myself that I'd be spending 10 minutes at most. Modi ji spent an hour and 15 minutes with me. And we had a very free ranging conversation, not limited to politics, not limited to the portfolio. And it just amazed me that a person who is so busy, so, I don't want to use the word burdened, but so many responsibilities on his shoulder, the time he spends with you is with you. That in itself gets you completely committed to that person. And the bell didn't ring once.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. He's not checking his messages, files, nothing.
Completely devoted to the person that he's conversing with. And that is leadership to me. That is commitment to me. And as I said to you, that I am not someone who's governed by this. I'm someone who's governed by this.
I'm going to come to one thing that I've seen many times. You go to temples, you are very spiritual. It's quite clear that it's not the ritual itself. You're totally committed to Hinduism. How do you feel about these attacks on Sanatan Dharma and it being called all kinds of names?
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Something that is the foundation of our existence. Faith in India cannot be separated from our existence. It is an integral part of our DNA. That faith has over centuries and thousands of years spread the notion of what the Prime Minister talks about today. And I was amazed when he coined the G20 presidency in that format. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. One world, one family, one earth. That in essence is the bedrock of our faith. And if someone doesn't decry that, someone wants to destroy that, that to me is evidence of someone who wants to destroy our civilization and the essence of our civilization. And this alliance that you talk about, look at the opportunism. The people who want to talk about Bharat Jodo are silent on this. Not a single comment.
You went to St. Stephen's, Stanford, Harvard. These are all liberal arts places. There are it's not even centrist. There is more a left liberal lobby which is working there. There seems to be this whole anti-BJP and anti-Modi especially narrative which has stemmed from those universities and the media and the ecosystem there now. So, and that's becoming louder and more assertive.
See, when you are in an echo chamber, like this one.
Not an echo chamber.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So when you're in an echo chamber and when you are unfortunately not exposed to what the reality on the ground is, then you may come up with certain notions. Notions that are not based on fact. Right? And therefore, and when you realize that the reality is different, then those notions do get dispelled. Now, in as much as there is this lobby that you talk about, there is a far greater lobby that believes in the leadership of Prime Minister Modi in the world. There's a far greater lobby that is looking to him no longer for leadership in India, no longer for leadership in the global south, but looking to him for leadership on a worldwide basis. And the G20, whether it was in Bali or whether it was the G20 in India, is clear evidence of that. COVID is clear evidence of that. Name me one country that was never on the technology curve, that has, in a time of human calamity, produced two vaccines, and not only produced two vaccines, but with a 140 crore population, looked at not only inoculating its own population, but through vaccine Maitri, inoculating people in 100 countries across the world. Everyone was raising their walls. And again, rightfully so. I'm not grudging any country for doing so.
Sure.
Right? And you had an India that lowered all her walls and, in fact, in a time of need, also reached out to the world. Now, why did that happen? Leadership of PM Modi. Operation Ganga. 25,000 of our students in Ukraine, we sent our planes out. 90 sorties were carried out by our civil aircraft. Almost about 60 sorties by the IAF. We did not bring back only Indian citizens.
Yeah, Bangladesh and
we brought
Nepal,
back citizens from across the world.
Afghanistan, yes.
Across the world.
Yeah.
Did any other country, and there were other citizens also stuck in Ukraine, did any other country, and I don't want to name any country, but did any other country send even a single plane? We opened up what were domestic airports in the neighboring countries to
facilitate those students.
To facilitate our international aircraft coming in.
Okay.
And I have to thank the leadership of those countries. And that has only been possible due to PM Modi. Right? So, today the world is also looking towards him and through him to India. Never ever before has the world occupied the center stage of international politics plus business. It is no longer a China plus one strategy. It is now an India strategy.
Interesting.
Never could you or I ever dream that Airbus would set up a manufacturing facility in India. Today we've ordered 56 aircraft, 16 are coming from their facility in Spain, 40 are going to be produced in Vadodara in a joint venture with Tatas. Never could you or I ever think that our Chandrayaan would get supplanted on the south pole of the moon. So, to use something that we've grown up watching on TV, but to use that cliched euphemism, if you will, India's going where it has never gone before.
Star Wars. Of course you'd say that. Okay, let me come to your portfolio now that we've talked about airports. 74 airports in 7 years. Minister, we're going to run this tweet of the former finance minister, Mr. Chidambaram, who lashed out at your party and your claims and calling them fake and hollow. So here's the tweet. The claims of the government that they built 74 airports in the last 7 years are hollow and untrue. Only 11 new airports were built since 2014, which are operational. The 74 airports include 9 helicopter stations and 2 waterdromes. The waterdromes closed down after the inauguration. Out of the 74 airports, 15 are no longer in use because there are no flights. The BJP NDA government launched 479 new routes, quote. Out of these, 225 are no longer in operation. Each scheme of the government can be exposed as partly true and mostly false. Boast and exaggeration are the hallmarks of the present government. What do you have to say to that? I know you clarified. Mr. Rijuju also said after that.
There are some people, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, there are some people who, having been in opposition for close to 10 years, believe that they must always wear the opposition hat, even to the detriment of our country. Why? Because I'm in opposition. Even if there's something good happening, I've got to pull it down. हिंदी में कहावत है कि कई ऐसे लोग होते हैं जो अपनी लकीर लंबी खींचने के बजाय में दूसरे की लकीर को मिटाने में लगते हैं. और ये उसी का उदाहरण है. Those who in their tenure could only build 74 airports in 67 years Prime Minister Modi has built 75 airports, waterdromes, and heliports in 9.5 years. And let me commit to you today that this is not where we're going to stop. By the year 2028, 2029, we will cross 200. Civil aviation is going through a explosive growth period that it probably has never seen through the history of our country. And civil aviation, let me tell you, is a very old enterprise in our country. It's not a recent phenomena. Civil aviation was there in our country prior to independence. Air India was started prior to independence. 2014, we had 6 crore passengers, domestic passengers in our country. Today, 9.5 years later, we have 14.5 crore passengers. By 2030 to 32, that number is going to grow from 14.5 today to 42.5 crore passengers. That's the kind of growth that you're looking at in India. 3x from where we are today. Okay? If you look at the number of airports, 74 in 2014, 149 today. And that is going to grow to above 200 by the year 2030. If you look at your fleet size, we were 400 in 2014. We are above 700 today. That's going to grow to about 1,200 to 1,500 by 2030. So civil aviation, now the next question that you should ask me is why? How? And the one change that Prime Minister Modi has brought about in the area of civil aviation is that he has truly democratized civil aviation. Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, the scheme.
Udan, yes.
Udan. The fact that cities and airports that were wiped off the civil aviation map post World War II, okay, that again, prior to independence, today are thriving as airports. Jharsuguda in Orissa, Rupsi in Assam, Kishangarh near Ajmer in Rajasthan, Darbhanga. These are airports, these are just examples for you, that are generating between 100,000 to 500,000 passengers per year. There was no connectivity. And that is only going to continue. So the important thing for me that I'm concentrating on is not only my 6 metros, but I need to make a hub and spoke system so that I can carry passengers from tier 3 cities to tier 2 to tier 1, connecting them across the length and breadth of India and then internationally.
What about affordability? Will it be affordable? I mean, yes, you are building...
So my sector, the civil aviation sector, is a highly price elastic sector. Unlike what you and I think when we're on the outside. If price goes up by 5%, demand drops off by 20%. It's a highly price elastic sector. Now, what happened in June, and I think that's what you're referring to.
The gouging, yeah.
So what happened in June is 2 things, Smitaji. One, please understand that this sector is a cyclical sector on an annual basis. So you have periods of high season and then you have periods of low season. So for example, starting Dussehra in October, your high season takes off all the way through Christmas, New Year up till end of Jan. And then you have low season from February until April, May when kids' schools go into vacation. And then May, the high season starts again till the onset of monsoon. Then from July to September again is low season. So you have crests and troughs throughout the season. And as you have crests and troughs, you also have variability in fare pricing. And that's not something that's limited to India. It's an international occurrence that happens. So we were in high season in June. Second, unfortunately, one of our airlines, due to contractual issues and having their own problems with their OEM supplier,
shut
shop. So we had suddenly close to about 30 aircraft in a fleet of 700 that were no longer flying. So you had a double whammy. You had a seasonal effect where there was high demand. And then on the supply side, you had close to about a 5 to 7% fall in terms of aircraft. And that created that environment. But even in that environment, you had select cities that were applied to by Go First that actually had this huge walloping rise in airfare. So Srinagar, Ahmedabad, Leh, Pune, 5 or 6 cities. I immediately called a meeting of the airlines on the 5th of June, if I recall correctly. And I very clearly explained to them. I did all the analysis. I showed them how fares were going up. And within 10 days of that meeting, fares had come down to lower levels than what were occurring prior to June.
There's this talk that India needs a new civil aviation policy. Do you agree with
I don't.
that?
I don't agree with that. Our civil aviation policy is promulgated in 2016. It's a very robust policy. I do not think. I think our policy front is very clear, very robust. In fact, after I took over, I changed a number of the policies. I changed the MRO policy. I changed the flying training organization policy. We took the drone policy back to the drawing board and completely scrapped the 72 permissions and the 25 fees forms that we had to pay and made it extremely simple. So from a policy perspective, I believe that civil aviation has evolved tremendously. Uh, sure, there are always areas where we need to improve. But I think a lot of digitization has taken place. We've taken BCAS digital. So we've got now e-BCAS. So all your permissions, all of that is online. We've taken DGCA digital. We've got now EGCA. So 298 services of DGCA are now online. So the human front and the going and submitting of forms and all of that is all today history. What is extremely important is to ensure that along with huge growth, public sector and private sector, we have close to about a 1 crore pipeline over the next 1 lakh crore pipeline over the next 3 to 4 years in terms of airport expansion. Private sector is about 60,000 crores off that, and AAI is another 25-30,000 crores, where AAI is looking at 42 brownfield projects and 3 greenfield projects, of which we built Holongi already. And the private sector is looking at 5 brownfield and 3 greenfield, Jewar, Navi Mumbai, and the airport near Vishakhapatnam. So we have a very expansive policy, but it's also important to increase the institutional structure. And that's something that had not been looked at for a while. So our airports Economic Regulatory Authority, we've increased their bandwidth from 5 personnel to 10. DGCA, we've increased by close to about 416 personnel. ATCOs, your air traffic controllers within Airports Authority of India, in 2019, we had roughly about 2,796 ATCOs. We've increased that to 3,700, and now, thanks to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharamanji, we've got an additional 385 ATCOs sanctioned to increase that bench strength. Because as the number of airports increase in India, as the number of watch hours increase in India, we need to have greater number of air traffic controllers as well. So the institutional setup has increased. I'm looking at now today setting up the ecosystem of civil aviation in the country. Civil aviation is unlike what you and I think.
What is ecosystem of civil aviation?
Yes, so unlike what you and I think is not only about airports and airplanes, you need to have the whole footprint of civil aviation place. What does that mean? We need to talk about MROs, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, so that the engines are adequately serviced. We've got a number of MRO players who've come in after the new MRO policy. Safran, the largest engine maker, has committed $150 million to set up a LEAP engine facility in India, servicing to start with about 100 engines and ending up at roughly 500 or 1,000 engines. We've redone the FTO policy because we need many more pilots in our country. So from 35 flying training organizations, we're going to end up at 50 flying training organizations by the end of this fiscal year. We've got the first helicopter training organization, not in India, but in Asia, that was set up 2 months ago in Khajuraho. We've issued the highest number of CPLs, commercial pilot licenses, in India's history, almost close to about 1,200 in this last financial year. And we hope to increase that going forward. along with MRO and FTO. Also looking at the area of aerospace manufacturing, because as this ecosystem comes into place, we must supplant the capability of manufacturing in India. And though Boeing and Airbus are already in India, Airbus exports close to about $650 million worth of equipment from India, Boeing about $1 billion. Airbus has set up its capacity of facility for the C-295 aircraft. Along with that, the Boeing has the Apache fuselages are made in India today. The tail fins of the 737s are made in India. The C-130J Hercules, the big Air Force aircraft, the appendages today are made in India. Collins Aerospace is here making all the chutes that come out of the aircraft within India, the seat harnesses in India. So slowly, the ecosystem, if you will, is being set up in India as we speak. And that will give a huge boost eventually to the civil aviation sector.
More airports that you build, the opposition always points to the fact that Adani gets to manage those airports. Why is that happening every time?
See, I don't know. Again, I think the opposition has no option but to raise bogies of the close to about 149 airports in India. A particular group has, I think, 5 or 6 airports.
And those are the significant ones.
They're not necessarily the significant. For example, Kolkata is with Airports Authority of India. Hyderabad is with GMR. Bengaluru is with BIAL, which is Fairfax Holdings. Delhi is with GMR. Jewar coming up is with Zurich International. So there are a number of airport players in this country. But when we put out a divestment plan for those particular airports, obviously you're going to give it to the highest bidder. And if you look at the numbers that came out amongst, and each airport, I think, if I'm not mistaken, had close to about 4 to 5 bidders who had bid for it. But obviously, the Adani Group had bid the highest for that particular airport. And therefore, it went to that particular party. Now, if you told me that don't give it to that party and give it to the second highest bidder, the next controversy would be, why did you give it to the second? So, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, according to the Congress party.
Right. I'm going to just conclude towards it because you have to leave also. I really want to know, what is it like in the Scindia household when everybody is discussing politics? Because people come from diverse political backgrounds. Some have been MLAs, some have been ministers, some have been chief ministers, some have been MPs.
Simple answer.
What is it like?
Simple answer, we don't discuss politics.
No, I don't believe that.
We don't.
Seriously?
At least we try not to. I think it's important to. I'm not going to say that it doesn't come up, but I think it's important to learn about what each other are doing. Let me take a step back here, and I think before I tell you about what the environment is like, this is one of the areas where I need to improve. Growing up, my sister and I didn't get to see very much of my father because he was in politics. He was always on the road. But the time he spent with us was tremendously quality time. Even if it was that 45 minutes in a day only or half an hour in a day. And I think the thing that impacted both of us was the quality of time he gave us. Maybe because it's been a hell of a roller coaster ride for me, or this is not an area where I have been able to necessarily be able to give that quality time. There's always something more on the table that you need to deal with. And I think this is one of the areas where I need to improve myself and be able to give that quality time.
Is cricket a part of conversation?
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
It's with your son especially.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Very passionate about it?
Very passionate. And I think we had a India-Australia match this past week in Indore, which is my home ground with MPCA. And I could only take out an hour and a half, but I was there. And when I was on the ground, I was I was a cricketer and I was a fan, and my only concentration was on the field, on every single ball. It's a magnet. It just takes you over. And I think if you're a die-hard cricket lover, when the game is on, there cannot be any distractions.
Right.
And even if someone walks past you, it's like, you know, how
Yeah.
can you do that? The ball is just being bowled.
Who are your icons? Who did you like? Did you put up posters on your walls, or did
Yeah,
you?
yeah, Viv
Yeah.
Richards and very, very early days. I remember watching cricket with my father when we had only black and white TVs. I was a schoolboy in Bombay, and we used to have a little black and white set, and we watching Gundappa Vishwanath and Sunny Gavaskar.
70s.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm talking about
Cricket
from those
match.
days.
The
Yeah.
yeah.
Wankhede Stadium and
Before
and
the
all of
one
that.
days came in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Much before.
Yeah.
Test cricket.
Is Test cricket still something that you watch?
Absolutely.
You do.
I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about the old form of the game as well. There is much to be said about it, as there is to be said about the T20. If we didn't have the T20, we would not have ability to perform under pressure, and that knack to be able to be fearless gets imbibed from T20. And the level of fitness, concentration, commitment that our youngsters today are showing is just unbelievable.
Yeah. And there's so much at in that the access they have to the training, to so much more than the earlier generation. I just a
No, no,
couple
no.
of
The earlier generation too. I have to say this to you because I have been witness to cricket in terms of anecdotes from my father's time of the Holkar greats to my father's period when he used to be playing in Gwalior and Indore and all over the place. And as a kid, I used to play with him at Railway Stadium when he was Railway Minister. Every week, every Sunday was a cricket match. The commitment was still very much there. The concentration on form, line and length, practice was still very tremendous. Yes, there is technology that has come
yeah.
to play, and there is science that has come to play now. Those elements were not there in those
Yeah.
days. But not to say the sportsmen in those days were even a iota less committed. In fact, even more committed. It was
Very
It was
natural game.
It used to be a dharm. Families and all of that came second.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the days, Smitaji, when there was no money in cricket.
Yeah.
There is a lot of money in cricket today. In fact, I would say that there's too much of money in cricket today. I'm talking about the days when you had players going out there and I'm not kidding you, literally taking a hatoda and keel and, hammering in those matting wickets before you start play and you start practice, right? And you didn't have the equipment and you didn't have all that exposure, but they would be playing day in and day out.
Yeah.
So the fervor in a sport and that dedication, again, very much like in public service, has to come from here.
That's very important for you, isn't it? For everything from the heart.
It is.
Unless you feel a passion, you
It
don't
is.
do it.
It is. And I believe that, I firmly believe that your life has to be about that. There are many things that we get obsessed with while we are on this earth, but we have to realize that at some point of time, the only thing that hopefully you will take away with you is the blessings and the emotions of people that you have been able to touch in your life.
I want to conclude on this one note, which I ask many of the guests who come on the podcast, is about mental strength and the ability to handle stress. You're just back from the India-China border. You were there recently. About you travel so much in your line of work. What do you do to keep that level of to keep yourself centered and manage stress?
So I think that's a very good question. So there are two types of stress. There is a physical element of stress, and there is a mental element of stress. And they are very different. For me, managing physical stress has, touch wood, fortunately never been a concern. I do 500 kilometers a day by car, or I'm touring 14, 16 hours a day. That's not been an issue. And then there is the mental stress. And I think for the mental stress part of it, you need to be able to switch off. For my father, the switch off was sports. So it was cricket, and then in his later years, golf. For me, the switch off on the one hand is cricket, and on the other hand, physical exercise, whether it's a workout or whatever else, and then reading or music. And I'm not regular, but it's something that I truly believe in, and that's the second thing that I really need to improve on is I do yoga, but not as often as I would want to. But I think that there's a great amount of power that comes from yoga, both physical power and mental power, the meditation part as well as the physical part. And that's something that I would like to do more. So I need to create a little bit of a balance between my workout and my yoga. And that's something I hope to work on as well.
And it's going to be a very busy schedule between Madhya Pradesh election
I mean, now,
and the national election.
Now I think till next April, May, you should forget about everything else and you need to focus.
Are you looking forward at all to the 2024 election?
Oh, absolutely.
As a challenge or as something
absolutely,
which is
absolutely. I believe every election is a challenge, and I think you should take it as such, whether it's the Madhya Pradesh Assembly election or the Lok Sabha election. And I think it's also brings with it a great deal of excitement because you have to go among the people with your report card, and therefore, if you've done a decent job in the last 5 years, then I think you should be welcoming and look forward to that opportunity. And therefore, I've always believed in life that election does not start the day the model code of conduct comes into place. For me, an election starts the day you win an election. And the election ends the day the model code of conduct is announced. Because that's the period that you should have been working day in and day out. Right. And if you have done so, then you go with a clear conscience to the people to asking them for their blessings for another mandate.
You know, Stanford has this speaker series. If you were to address students of Stanford and Harvard, your alumni, what would you tell them to join politics, not join politics, and politics in India? How is it different from anywhere else?
I wouldn't sermon anyone to do anything. I would just say that it's extremely important for you to be doing something in life that gets you excited when you wake up in the morning. Whatever you decide to do in life, whatever profession you go in, whether you are in media or you're in business or you're in social work or you're in politics, it's got to be something that excites you when you wake up in the morning. That's number one. The other thing, we always feel in life that we need to be a certain way to be accountable to X or to be a certain way to be accountable to Y. I always believe that at the end of the day, you're accountable to yourself. And you need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror before you go to sleep at night and say that I did whatever I could possibly do today. And I did it with a clear conscience. And third, I've always believed in the principle that always be truthful, be loyal. And if you are truthful and loyal and you work hard, there's an old adage that goes that the softest pillow is a clear conscience. And the minute you hit the sack, you'll be out.
On that note, thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Thank you very much. And I don't know where time went. You just led me from one area to the other. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And
Thank
wishing you all the best for Madhya Pradesh election as well as 2024.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching or listening in to this episode. Hope you enjoyed listening in as much as I liked chatting with Jyotiraditya. Thank you. Namaste. Jai Hind.